talk a little bit about the end of the semester. All right, and what we are going to do. We have class today, and we have class on Thursday. Today will be a chance for you to ask questions about the things that are least clear to you, and I'll do my best to answer them. Whatever time we have left will be devoted to going to the lab and working on stuff. The next thing on Thursday, it will be an all-work day. We'll just go right to lab and work on stuff in there. You've had the evaluation for this class, so we don't need to do that today. I'm just kind of talking out loud. There is a final due date on everything, which is December 9th. If I do not hear from you in advance, then anything that you turn in after that will be disregarded if we have not made arrangements. Let me rephrase that. So it's not just that I have heard from you, but I have heard from you and we have made arrangements. So don't like on December 9th at 11:59 say, oh yeah, I'm going to be late. That doesn't count, all right? We need to have made arrangements about that, and we can discuss that. We don't have a final in this class. The final is a project, all right? So, really, the project is a great opportunity to show what you've really learned. And not just piecing together things mechanically, but piecing together things in a way that really makes sense. That's why I think the class that we have Thursday is very important, for you to be able to show me and show other people in the class the state of your project. Because it needs to make sense, all right? There are sometimes I get projects and I don't know where to begin with them. I don't know what I'm supposed to do to enter a new order, let's say, or to log in or to create something. It should be logical. There's no instruction manuals with websites. When your users go and visit a website, it's there in front of them. They need to be able to figure out what they need to do, all right? And your navigation and the way you organize the site and all that needs to be made in such a way that it's very, very, very clear to people what they need to do to accomplish what they need to do, all right, on the site. So it's sometimes you get too close to a problem. It makes sense to you because you're the one that dreamed it up and you're the one that thought of it. That's why it's good to have someone else look at your work and provide some feedback. So that's what we'll do on Thursday. There are no classes next week in my class. So none of my classes meet next week. If you want some time with me next week, there's no scheduled office hours, but we can arrange them. So contact me. And again, contact me and give me a little bit of advance warning. Not like 11 o'clock on Monday, can we meet at 11:30 on Monday, I will be checking my email periodically, and so give some advance warning. You can also send questions via email. That's a possibility as well. Most of this stuff has been repeated in announcements online, so if you forget any of it, go and refer to the announcements online, and that should cover it. All right. What are things that are confusing you? Especially either with regards to the assignments or with regards to what you're working on for your project. Anyone? Well, it depends on what you're doing inserts and updates and deletes are on. All right. So the question is if you're doing inserts, updates, and deletes, do you need to have an admin? And the answer is, well, no. It really depends on what you're doing inserts, updates, and deletes on. Thinking of your particular project where you're like having events related to an organization, yes, you would probably need to do an admin.
Okay.
My suggestion would be get the inserts, updates, and deletes done first, and then put in the logic to make sure that only an admin can do it. All right. If you get that working and you don't have successfully coded an admin mode, that'll be a little bit of a deduction, but that'll be better than not getting the inserts, updates, and deletes done at all.
Okay.
So remember, I mean, this is a world of partial credit. All right, let's be frank here. All right, so the perfect website, you'd get full credit and it would be dazzling, and you should print it out and hang it on your refrigerator at home, right? But if it's not quite up to those standards, put yourself in my shoes, and what is it that I'm trying to do out of this? There's certain things that you're supposed to do on this project. You're first of all supposed to make a coherent website, one that makes sense, all right, and one that accomplishes something, all right. But there's also some more basic stuff, like you need to be able to do an insert, you need to be able to do an update, you need to be able to do a delete, all right. So in a case like that, yes, for your site to make sense, it would really need to have an admin mode. That being said, if you're pushed for time and you're really struggling, get the inserts, updates, and deletes working, and then try to attack the admin mode. Because if you don't get that done, yeah, there'll be some deduction for that, but at least you've shown you can do an insert, update, and delete. And that's important. Other questions? Yes?
Looking at, I think it was like Lab 8, when a user is submitting a review, and they've already submitted a review.
Yes.
The way I tackled it was that I made a review page. They go to that page, they type in the information, they submit. And if a review for that user in that film already existed, it just wouldn't let them insert the review. Is there a way so that when the user being logged in clicks on the link from where the films are listed to go to the review, to check if they've already made a review for that film at that point and then just deny them from getting to that page?
Yes. In other words, the question was, and I repeat the question sometimes because now I'll be sure the mic picks it up. So it's not like I'm just repeating it just to repeat it. The question is in our lab assignments, a person can only submit one review per film. So if I reviewed Star Wars, I can't review Star Wars again. All right, and and again, this gets back to the thought of how do I want to say this?
Where do you want to fight your battles?
Where do you want to fight your battles? Exactly. How do you want to handle your errors? All right. How do you want to handle your errors? All right. Or problem situations, I guess. Probably the most straightforward way to do this is what you described. Let them go in and try to do it, and then laugh at them and say, "Ha, you can't review this. You already reviewed it." All right. So that would be done very straightforwardly via exception handling. So you would do the insert, or you'd try to do the insert, an exception would be thrown, and then you get a message that would say, "Can insert, possible problems, maybe you've already reviewed this, or maybe there's a temporary issue with the database." That's sort of the problem with that. You could possibly print some details of the exception if you wanted to give some guidance, but that wouldn't necessarily be terribly user-friendly. But you could do that, all right? So catching the exception or catching the error after it happens is one way. The other way, though, is to prevent them from doing it. And I'm not going to code it, but we can talk through it, all right? Let's say this is the review page. Here's how I would do it. All right? And again, I don't think there's going to be any problems with this. But again, since I'm obviously not doing it, there could be some small issues. I would have a page that would have 2 panels. All right, so this is my review page. I would have on my movie list and a link to review it. And when you click it, you make it to the review page. That page would have 2 panels on it. And only one of these panels is going to be shown anytime. All right? One panel, and again, we could make this more and more sophisticated if we wanted to. If they've already reviewed it, we could simply display, you've already reviewed this.
And after like 2 seconds, you could just spit them back to the...
You could do that, or you could say click here to go back to the list, or whatever, any number of things. All right? I don't know if that's satisfying though, because it's like, I didn't review that movie. I just watched it the other day. Forgetting that you thought you were reviewing Star Wars and you really reviewed Star Trek or something goofy like that. So the other thing you could do is you could display that on 11/10/2016, you reviewed Star Wars and gave it 3 stars. All right? That's like, oh, yeah, that's a possibility. All right, so that's another thing you could do. A third thing that you could do is you could say, do you want to change or delete this? In other words, oh yeah, I reviewed Star Wars Episode 4, and I only gave it 3 stars. Oh, I forgot, I got that confused with Episode 5. I love Episode 4, so I want to give it 4 stars. So you could put this up, you could pop this up in a details view, and then have edit and delete. Delete would be just like in case like, oh yeah, I reviewed Star Wars, I meant to review Star Trek, so let's delete this and I'll go and re-add it. All right, so that would be one possibility. This is probably the best, right? But these two take care of it, and it's probably better than just letting the insert fail. Generally speaking, anything that you can do to prevent an error from happening is better than letting it happen and then cleaning it up. Now there's times, like, I like the way you worded it. It's where you want to fight your battles, you know. Sometimes, yeah, at least you're handling it and you're not just letting it blow up, all right? And then this would be simply the entering in of the review. Now, the question is how are you going to decide which one of these to display? Any thoughts on that? How would we do that? Yes?
As soon as you click review, you already have the film ID
Right?
being passed, and you should have the user ID and the session data.
All right, film ID is on the query string. Very good. And the user ID in the session variable.
So you could run a SQL statement to see if a review exists with both of those pieces of data.
Okay, what code have we looked at this semester that would look a lot like this code? I hope that's a clear question. Something we did that is awful similar to this, looking to see if something exists in a database. Well, there would be a where clause, definitely. There was specifically one thing that we did where we wrote a SQL statement. And again, this SQL statement isn't going to be associated with anything visual necessarily. All right? We did it when we logged on. So it'll almost be like logging on. Would construct, select star from review where film ID equals and user ID equals. All right?
And then we look to see. Either we have, it's just like logging on, right? Either we have something or we don't. In fact, we could do a select count. And either we're going to get a 0 or we're going to get a 1. All right? If we got a 0, they haven't reviewed it. They get a 1, they did review it. So, then based on that, we hide one panel and show the other panel. All right? Now, where would we put this code?
In CS.
In the CS file, but specifically what event?
Update? Or not the...
Not update. In the page load event.
Yeah.
In other words, as soon as this page loads, we look and decide that.
Okay.
All right? So, in a nutshell, that's what it is. The thing about this class, and this is where the project comes in, and even some of your assignments, but especially your project, is we talk about a lot of stuff. And when you're faced with a problem, and I talk about this in all my programming classes. I was talking about it in Java yesterday. All right? When you're faced with a problem, or maybe I was talking about it in one class yesterday. When faced with a problem, you got to sort of take a mental inventory. Like, where have I seen a problem like this, similar to this before? All right? And how did I handle that? And how is this different? How is this the same? So, in the period of time we have in this class, of the 15 weeks, we can teach you the fundamentals of how these things work and how the framework works and what tools that you have. Your job as a developer is piecing those tools in the framework together, along with everything else that you know, to make something that solves your unique problem. All right? And that's something that, unfortunately, we can't teach. We can just give you an opportunity to practice. And that's where the labs come in, and that's where especially the project comes in, because the project is much more open-ended. You're not really directed what you have to do. You are, you're given the opportunity to practice the tools. And then again, if as you complete your degree and take the systems development class, you have an opportunity to practice that even more, and an even bigger, more open-ended sort of project. All right? So that's part of your job, and that's something that, unfortunately, given that I can't talk about every single situation that you're liable to encounter, all I can do is give you the tools and try to cultivate the sort of thought process that you need to go through in solving problems like this. But that's a great question. And again, is it worth it to do this? That is a judgment call, Typically, yes, it's better to do that. To do it this way as opposed to just letting the insert fail and displaying an error message. All right, but again, I can talk about theoretical things, of theoretically it's better to do it this way. A lot of times in the real world, and even in this class with a deadline for the project, you have to make compromises, and you have to figure out what is the most cost-effective way to do it. And if you're going to take more time to do something, you better get a lot of benefit from it, and so on. That's part of the art of project management, which again, we don't really teach in this class, but should be aware of the issues. All right. In this class, I can be all high and mighty and say we want to do everything the absolute best way. In the real world, though, as you work on problems, sometimes, to paraphrase another professor here, sometimes good enough is good enough. All right? It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it does the job. Other questions? Yes?
Is session data stored server side?
Yes. So the session data is in the server. In fact, if you run, and this is going to be a lot of work just to do something, but I think just to do something small, but I think it's worthwhile. If you run remember, we talked about all of the client-side code that the server generates.
if we run a server-side script, there's a lot of stuff that gets generated that we've kind of ignored in the HTML. It's probably worth it to spend a minute looking at that. So let's go up and bring up just any old example that we did before. I hope I was supposed to do that.
I've stopped using 2015.
So let's go and run any web form. The question was, the question was is where is the session information stored? And it is stored on the server. It's stored as part of the web server. All right. However, there has to be something that ties the client side's request to the proper session to which it belongs. And that's what we're going to look at here. So if I go and run this, if we go and look at the source code, there's a whole bunch of stuff like this. If I'm not mistaken, that highlighted code is what links this client to the proper session on the server. So when I submit this form, a hidden form field is a form field that goes with the form, just like anything goes with the form, all right? But it's not on the screen. Typically it's not on the screen because it's something that is like internal that you don't want the user messing around with, all right? So that view state, if I'm not mistaken, ties this client request to a particular session on the server. So the server will use this to, so it doesn't get, like if both of us were doing the same thing on a site, you'd have session variables, I'd have session variables. How does it know for a given new request that comes in, which session is it relating to? And if I'm not mistaken, that would be how it would do it.
So session server and all CS is, all code behind is server side as well.
All code behind the server side as well.
All right.
The only handful, and again, that's important. If you remember when we had a drop down where we coded an on-change event for it, that was an on-change on the server side. So it would have to be submitted before the code would actually run on an on-change event on that. So simply changing it, unless you click auto post back, won't submit it. You'd have to either have a button or make it auto post back. And that's important, really understanding the whole flow of how things work for the server doing its thing, creating a web page, sending it back to the client, and where that code runs and the sequence of things. That's sort of important to know. Other questions?
I feel like I had one more. Oh, it was just something I noted. Where people have problems with the poll website, because when I would run it in visual and it was checking like for user logon, it would throw an exception, and so I just needed to check if my data was null first.
Okay.
And I was wondering why that wasn't happening when you were doing it and why it was happening when I was doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Back up. A little bit. Right there. Holes 6.
Oh, there we go. I thought there was another bug I saw in lab where it didn't save something.
What was that? That was for like review and you had it in the code like previous, and then you fixed it. Lab ended where we couldn't get something to work, and so you uploaded the
Right.
fixed one. But this was something, I found it,
Okay.
because what you're going to do is you're going to open it up and it's probably going to work for you. And then I'm going to just stare open mouth because I'm not going to.
Okay.
And you're using Visual 2015?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Now, this is when you go to log on.
Yes.
And what specifically?
So if you go to the CS file
Uh-huh.
for the login page, I'll be able to
Okay.
pinpoint exactly where. Yeah. So if you scroll down to a little bit more, just a little bit more. Yeah, if my data dot read.
Mhm.
So this is the problem I was having. When I would run the code in a browser, like Internet Explorer or Chrome, it would throw an exception at that line because my data would be null. And that was because I was putting in like garbage or a username without something, or I was just trying to do something unsuccessfully. And so it wouldn't even get anything. Like I guess making the my data variable just failed.
Okay.
Yeah. But when I've seen you do it in class, it's worked for you. So if like you ran it right now,
Okay.
and you just tried to make it fail.
Here. Yeah, unsuccessful. What if I put nothing in? news is that I get that. So I would, the fix then, and this is always a good idea if you're dealing with objects, would be saying if my data
Not equal.
not equal to null.
All right.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I can't really remember what the other issue was, but either I fixed it. If I didn't, I apologize. If you run into it, let me know. And then you would go like that. Yeah. So that's probably, yeah, that's a little bit of sloppiness on my part. Checking to see if an object is null after you've created it, especially if you've created it, especially if you've not explicitly created it by saying a new, all right, is a good idea to test if it's not null. So that was a little bit of sloppiness.
Okay, that's all.
All right.
I was just making sure that, like,
Good.
I was doing something wrong.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
Other questions? If we had more time, if there was another week, I know if there was another week, we'd all probably go crazy. But if there was another week or two in this class, what I would look at probably, and topics if you are interested and want to explore on your own or expand, is one of them is doing AJAX with this. And doing AJAX with this is actually fairly straightforward. Those of you that have taken CIS or are taking CISS243, we cover AJAX sort of from a nuts and bolts level. This provides you tools to do it fairly quickly and painlessly and easily. The other thing is we've explored in this course the web forms model. There's a totally different philosophy for development called the models view control. And that is probably more appropriate on like really big projects. All right, so if you wanted to, let's say if you're going to study one more thing about ASP.NET on your own, models view control would probably be the best thing for you to look at. It would require you relearning a fair amount of stuff, but again, it's a different way of doing it. All right, any other questions? All right, we'll see you in lab then.